What up, guys? Welcome today to the podcast. Today, Eugene and I are going to go into a short podcast with you guys about sort of how to create your own game. That's a question I get a lot from people. They're like, Chewy, I've heard that I need a game. I need a game plan. I need a style. How do I find those things? Well, first off, just before we get into the tips, this process is going to take you years. This is not something that like you patch up overnight. Again, you can spend years developing a technique. So again, this is going to be a long-term process, but this can give you some direction and sort of guidance on where to go, where to search for things. But again, as we'll talk about it, ultimately is going to depend on you, what you feel, but just make sure that like you understand this process is going to take a while. I just share that with you because again, a lot of times we're in this culture of like push button things and like wanting things to be now. And, you know, I don't want to say instant gratification because I don't think that everybody's necessarily like that. I think that sometimes we just get impatient. I mean, because I remember when I was 18 years old, I was impatient as can be.
Yeah.
I wanted things to be now. That's not new, right? I'm reading a book right now about it's called Devotion. I watched the movie when I was sick, and I was like, man, it's a good movie.
Mhm.
Let me go read the book because the book's probably going to be better, and the book is better. It's got so much detail, and like you listen to these guys writing, you know, letters home to their family, you know, of like the Korean War.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, I want to be done with this stuff. I want to be over with it, right? I mean, so again, everybody wants to be to the desirable place as quickly as possible, no matter what that is, and so that's not new. So that said, I'm not criticizing anyone. So that said, it's going to take a long time, but these tips will give you some guidance. 7 tips to help you find your game in jiu-jitsu. Big thanks to our sponsors for helping make the podcast happen. Ice Barrel, if you guys have not heard of them before, Ice Barrel is a company that produces it's basically a big sturdy plastic barrel, and you throw water and ice in there and it'll get you really cold and you can do your ice baths there. One of the things about it that is nice is that it can be a little bit less cost prohibitive. If you've looked at any of the ice, like any of the ice tank plunge type things, anything where you're, you know, it's an ice thing, ice bath thing. I mean, they get really expensive. I've seen some of them go upwards of like $12,000 and $14,000, which is pretty steep. And so a lot of you guys are probably not willing to spend 10 G's on a thing to take an ice bath, which you're probably not going to do like that often, right? And even at the most, you'll be in there for a couple minutes at a time. So again, Ice Barrel makes a really nice product that then again allows you to take an ice bath, and it's very easy. It's very portable. You don't have any hoses or electricity or anything else like that. So you can put it wherever you want to put it. You can put the ice in there, put the water in there, and you can take your ice bath. If you guys want to get an ice bath set up at your home or wherever so that you can do these and do them with some regularity, Ice Barrel would be a great company to check out. You can go to their website at icebarrel.com/jiu-jitsu. That'll give you a discount on the product. If you guys want to get started with ice baths, that would be a great product to get started with. icebarrel.com/jiu-jitsu. You can check out Charlotte's Web if you guys want to try out some CBD products. If you've ever been interested in CBD products, maybe you've heard people like me talk about them, maybe you've heard about them elsewhere, but you've never tried them out. Charlotte's Web is a really reputable company to do that with because they're third-party tested. They have their stuff tested by a company that is not their own. They have, with that said, with their own stringent testing processes, they make sure that what is in that bottle is what they say is in that bottle. They have your regular CBD products, the tinctures, the gummies, and everything else. And they also have some products for people that get tested, you know, so people that maybe are competing in a sport that's tested by USADA. They actually have like some stuff that you can take. Check out if you're in that sort of category, if you get tested and you're worried about using a CBD product, check out their Daily Sports Edge. And if you don't, well, you can use whatever you want to. But I encourage everybody who is maybe been interested in it to try it out. I remember the first time I heard about CBD, I was skeptical. I was like, sounds like snake oil. It's since then become a really good tool for recovery, in my opinion, especially with as much training and stuff as I do. So if that's something that is interesting to you as far as improving your recovery, then give it a try. Try it out and see if it helps you out with recovering from your exercises, your training, and everything else. And if you go to Charlotte's Web's website, use the promo code Chewjitsu20 for 20% off the order, and check it out. Also, thanks to our buddy Matt at Epic Roll. Matt is a black belt in jiu-jitsu who runs a jiu-jitsu company for jiu-jitsu people. He has all sorts of different gear and apparel. So everything from gis, shorts, rash guards, I really like the shorts. Many of the longtime listeners, you guys know this. I like the Velcro-less shorts, no Velcro, because in a lot of cases that Velcro wears out, and then you're stuck with a pair of shorts that all overall are still usable, but now you can't keep them up on your waist. So I really like those. He also has t-shirts that, like this one that I'm wearing right now, that are comfortable. I like the designs to them. They're fun. They're not too aggressive and loud. I remember, years ago, all the jiu-jitsu stuff was very like aggressive. And then, even like sometimes where I say this from a person like me, I like simple stuff more than I like really loud stuff. So anyway, it's stuff that if you're like me, might enjoy wearing, and it's comfortable. So again, if you want to check out any of this stuff, go to epicrollbjj.com, and the website is, or the promo code is Chewjitsu, CHEWJITSU, for 15% off. Also, thanks to our sponsor, Manscaped. Manscaped.com is the website. Again, if you guys have never checked out Manscaped before, I'm sure you've heard about them. They're kind of everywhere right now. They are the premier men's grooming company. They have everything from trimmers. They started off originally, I think it was like a ball thing. It was like trim your balls. Everything was about balls, right? And which again, I was pretty like, I didn't really want to talk about that, but they do make a good ball trimmer.
Such a prude you are.
I know, right? I'm a product of my times. But, they've come out with all these different products since then. And most recently, they came out with a beard trimmer. So the beard trimmer is pretty cool. So it has an adjustable guard on it, which I think is pretty handy if you guys have ever had to trim your beard. And a lot of times you understand you have different lengths you don't just trim your beard with one length. You have to trim it slightly different lengths, shorter in certain areas, longer in others, most of the time if you want it to be kind of shaped up. And then you have to change those guards out and everything else. It's kind of a pain. Well, their beard trimmer is just an adjustable guard. And again, it's wireless. So it's nice. It's wireless. You don't have to have a cord, or cordless. I guess you say cordless. Wireless makes it sound like it's like a phone or something, but cordless. But
I get it. I know.
You know what I'm saying? It's cordless.
Still the same thing. It does not have a wire. So I think both definitions apply.
But it's a good product. And so everything I've used from Manscaped has been like premium quality stuff. It works really well. I've always been impressed with it, and the beard trimmer was no different. And again, so if you guys are a man, or a man in your life that would like some of the stuff that Manscaped has, check them out at manscaped.com. The promo code is Chewjitsu20 for 20% off the order, and you get free shipping. Also, guys, if you want to support the podcast directly and get access to some exclusive content plus a bonus, you can check us out at patreon.com/the Chewjitsu podcast. Upon joining, you'll get access to some exclusive content from every single episode that we've done, along with some exclusive content that's not released anywhere else, like narrated rolls, rolling videos, narrated content from competitions, as well as a bonus that we've put together, which one includes a seminar that I did, which is gi and no-gi techniques. Some of my best gi and no-gi techniques, and then also a stretching / mobility for jiu-jitsu practitioner seminar that Eugene put together several years ago. He started doing it at one of my jiu-jitsu camps that I had here in town. I told him to put together a nice 20-minute, easy to follow session to say, hey, just take these guys through stuff that's going to help them if they're jiu-jitsu people. He went through and did that, and then everybody that did it was like, whoa, my hips feel so loose. Everything feels so much better. I'm moving better. And so again, that's in there. So if you want to follow along with him on video and use it for yourself, it could be a great addition to the mix, especially if you're someone that feels really tight, feel like your joints and your hips and stuff are really snug, and you feel tightness in your legs, your shoulders and stuff like that. There's a lot of things in that warm-up routine that could definitely help you. And again, if you're a little bit more loose, a little bit more mobile, probably going to be useful for jiu-jitsu, right? And then last, guys, if you want to join my daily email where I give you an idea to chew on, it's kind of the tagline that seems to be building up in it, because again, it's an email, so I can't show you techniques there. I have YouTube and Instagram and stuff for that, right? Or my products, or even if you come to my gym. But the email is basically to give you some idea, mindset, some philosophical ramblings. Even sometimes I share book ideas. It has a lot of different stuff that it encompasses. It's not just me telling you to either buy something or just telling you some random jiu-jitsu training thing. There's a lot of different stuff it encompasses. But if you guys want to join and get my daily newsletter email, you can do so by going to my website at chewjitsu.net/join, JOIN. Upon joining, you'll get some exclusive ebooks as a gift for joining. Things like game planning, which kind of goes along with this episode. It's basically helping you design a game plan for a competition. The other one is about drilling. And so again, if you guys want to get access to those ebooks, go over to that website, chewjitsu.net/join. You'll get the ebooks for free just for signing up. And then again, you'll get my daily email newsletter afterwards, and you can unsubscribe at any time. So guys, with that said, let's jump into this podcast and get some ideas on how to develop and find your own game in jiu-jitsu. All right, guys. So how to find your jiu-jitsu game, how to start laying the foundation for your own jiu-jitsu style, and even finding out how to do that. So this is not an exhaustive list, but this is some stuff that Eugene and I came up with, trying to get it down to the most basic fundamental points that you can implement. The first one that I would share with you, and this is a good one, this is an important one, is basically take a look at like-bodied people, like-bodied competitors, like-bodied people in your gym rolling. And so I remember actually one of the things that one of my old coaches did for me and my buddy is he would record, this is back in the VHS tapes days, he recorded some VHS tapes of some different matches of particular competitors. And he was like, hey man, watch these guys. You know what I mean? Like watch these guys go. And because you guys kind of have a similar build to them. And we got to watch them. And it was like, okay, finding people with a similar body type, same weight class, things like that, and then figuring out how they move, what kind of things do they favor? Because you'll start to see that like certain body types typically favor certain positions. This isn't always the case, as we'll talk about in a bit, but a lot of times, like for instance, if you have a long, lanky person with long legs, probably going to be a triangle person, right? If you have someone that's like relatively squatty, stocky, muscular, they probably a lot of times are going to be very focused on like takedowns and top pressure, things like that. But again, there's some variation to it. But a really useful tip, if you want to try to find techniques that could be good for your game, positions that could be good for your game, is going out and finding people who have a body type similar to yours, similar weight class, same things like that. And it could be people inside your gym, like some of the higher belts. It could be competitors that you find. You could even go online, and some of the things that you can do now, which is crazy, is you can find, like, let's say you're a purple belt masters or something. We'll talk about age later on, but let's say you're a purple belt masters. You can go find purple belt master matches on YouTube because people post them.
Yep.
And you can say, man, what are these guys doing? What are these guys in my weight class doing? And it can give you an idea of things that could potentially work for you.
Yeah. So let's go into this way. Who do you think is maybe, if you have to look at tall, lanky jiu-jitsu practitioners, who's someone that maybe comes to mind that's a professional or like high level that you would maybe tell someone to look at?
Well, a good one is my buddy Chad Hardy. I mean, he's a long, lanky guy, and definitely plays that particular prototype very well. But you've got guys like Miragali, pretty tall, lanky. Not, I mean, he's muscular, but he's not like huge or whatever. There's plenty of guys. I don't look at the, and this is for me, I don't look at the lanky guys as much as I look at the guys that are a little bit more average build or thicker, because those are the guys I mimic a lot more versus like the long, lanky guys. It's not my style.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, if somebody was trying to find someone to kind of emulate, I guess. I think you probably, you tell me if I'm wrong, probably Andre Galvao was one that you probably looked at.
Yeah, he was a big influence early on, because like when I was really getting to jiu-jitsu professionally, was right around the time that he was sort of making his his climb.
Yeah.
He was just winning the worlds and was getting big and everything else. He was getting into his first year of the ADCCs, stuff like that. And so, Braulio Estima, one of the guys he competed against in his first ADCC, great long type of guy, build and style. But yeah, Andre Galvao was one. He was definitely an influence for me because, he was one of those guys out there that I really liked. When I was really when I was a white belt, there was a guy named Pablo Popovich, and I remember rolling with him, super impressed by him, and he had a very good passing game. And back in the day, he was doing like a lot of over-under passing, and so that was like one of the first passes I really tried to nail, was the over-under pass. And he was very good at it. And so again, there's definitely some influences there.
Yeah, I think I really actually liked Marcelo Garcia, although he was a different build than me. He's kind of shorter, I think. But I like the butterfly game and the X guard. I play a lot of X guard, which I really like. He does a ton with X guard, so I liked his stuff.
Yeah, I like Marcelo's game on the bottom as well. Like, I don't play the passing style the same that he does, but I really like his bottom game. Like I said, a lot of butterfly, a lot of X guard, arm drags, things like that. And so those things are always useful to me because you don't have to be long for them. You can be kind of an average build, or you can be even tall or short. Like butterfly is a pretty pretty universal position that you can
so.
use. You can use it depending. I mean, there's some advantages to being taller and longer with it. There's advantages to being shorter and stockier with it, but it's not one of those positions where like you can't play this position if you're not this or that.
Yeah, X guard, I think, in my opinion, I think X guard, if you're short limbed or long limbed, you can play it. I think another guy that's pretty tall that I've plays a very different game. Keenan Cornelius plays. I mean, he does. If you like the lapel stuff, obviously he's really crafty with that, and he has like a very he's very tall and thin. So he'd probably be a pretty interesting.
Hodger Gracie's a great example of a guy who's fairly tall, and it's even for as big as he is, he's not very like thick. He's a fairly, like when you see him in person, he's like a pretty thin guy. I mean, I don't know if he's getting older now, so I don't know if he still is, but I remember like seeing him and he was fairly like wide, but when he would turn sideways, he was very thin. And has a great classic jiu-jitsu style. But a longer guy style for sure.
All right. Let's go next one.
Another one that would be really useful to you, and this is something to keep in consideration, is the age of the person that you're trying to mimic, right? So if you're looking around for people for inspiration to model, I mean, this is what humans do, right? We think about how we learn to speak. We learn to speak early on by just modeling after what we see around us. I mean, this is why if someone grows up in like the deep South, they're probably going to have that deep Southern drawl, right? And that's not because they actively were taught to speak that way. It's because as they grew up, they modeled after those things. And humans, I think this is what we do unnaturally. We can also do it intentionally, where you can say, I want to model after. That's like for me, when I was younger, I remember having these moments where like I grew up poor, but then through jiu-jitsu and other things, I would meet these people that were either, fairly wealthy or just pretty well off. And I would look at the behaviors that they exhibited under certain circumstances. And I would look at the behaviors that others did. And I was like, well, those are the behaviors that I want to model after, right? Like, like thrift and frugality and, being emotionally like chill, things like that. But kind of going back to the thing about the age, like, again, if you're going to be, we're telling you to be intentional about this. We're not saying this is going to happen just by happenstance. If you're going to intentionally pick someone and say, I want to model after that person, you should probably find someone who is maybe not the same age, but is at a comparable age, or at least has things that is reasonable for your age. Keep that in mind. We'll talk more about that in a second, because the next tip will kind of go along with the last two we've had. But you have to keep your age limitations into play, because again, the body, we all know this, as you get younger and older, when you're younger, your body is this amazing youthful machine that you can basically abuse and treat like crap. And somehow the damn thing keeps running, right? Because it's new. But, it's kind of like as we get older, we all know this, your body's kind of like an old car that you got to kind of warm it up a little bit longer. It's got leaky oil, so you got to do more maintenance on it. There's things that are going on. And so you have to keep those limitations of your age into play, even the way that you might like try to mimic. Maybe you're watching some young guy and he's like got this furious pace going back and forth due to a lot of misdirection. That's fine when you're younger. As you get older, maintaining that kind of pace becomes difficult, even for a guy like me who does this stuff professionally. It becomes tough to maintain that pace. This is why you'll see the older guys, they start to slow down a little bit. So some places to look would be, let's say if you're younger, obviously you can do whatever you want. But if you are getting older, look at some of the Masters Divisions competitors. I know they're not as exciting, as like, say, like the ADCC, championships or something like that. But again, we're not looking for entertainment. We're talking about study here, right? And if you're going to study something to bring into your game and sort of look for clues as to what you could be good at, you want to study for what you could actually use. So like go online and you can look up, like go to like say, okay, who won the Masters Worlds in my division? Great. Okay. Let's look up those matches on Flow Grappling or on the YouTube, right? Let me watch what kind of moves they're using. Those are great things to look for, because again, you're looking at like apples and apples. You're looking at people that you could face / you're looking at people that are in your same sort of situation. And those can be great clues as to maybe what you should pursue.
Yeah. I think it was maybe the second seminar I ever went to. And it was Bernardo Faria.
Oh, yeah.
And Bernardo did a lot of the over-under. It was a gi seminar, and he won his world titles in the gi. And everybody knows Bernardo from BJJ Fanatics and the videos. Okay, guys, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And Bernardo's game kind of stuck out to me because the over under it's a slowy, kind of grindy pressure passing game. And so I thought his game really was very useful to me as far as passing goes. And now he's an older guy and he still trains. And I think he came out with like something for older grapplers now, which I think would be, I'm not plugging his stuff, but I think when he did the seminar at our gym, I really actually still do some of the things that he does that he taught. And we have, guys like you do a lot of the over under passing and double under passing, things like that. So I think, sometimes that kind of game, seeing somebody that's a little older and maybe their game's a little slower, sometimes you might want to do, you should be able to explode and go fast and but control the pace. So I think pacing is one of the most important things, especially as you get older. If you got a younger guy, like there's people at the gym that are black belts that are in early 30s or late 20s.
Yeah.
And man, they can still keep that pace. If
you're some of the competitive purples and browns that were ready to move and they're young.
Yes.
They can wear you out.
Yeah. And they can move, they can go. And so learning how to control the pace, I think, is huge as you age. And then I think the other thing I was writing some notes, look at older guys, not just the training, but like they're out of training stuff that they do, their body maintenance, what they do for maintenance, what they do for their diet, kind of things like that. And then the other thing was possibly like their recovery and even their schedule, their intensity of schedule. You've done something that I think was very important, because when you're like in your late 20s, even like early 30s, you were getting injured a lot more. You have to take time off the mats for injuries. And then when you kind of started because you would be on the mats every day training hard, and then you started kind of to taper that and kind of ebb and flow. You got a couple recovery days, and you get a little intense days, then you give yourself some stuff. So I think that's you could probably speak to that, is like, I've just noticed you being off the mats versus on the mats as far as physical injury goes. And that's been very much less as you've gotten older, which is surprising because you're still as effective in doing, well at tournaments, but you're injured less.
Yeah. I mean, it's like one of those things where there's a trade-off to it, right? So I don't have the deep gas tank that I used to. Cause like, you got to think, like, there were times, like, as an example, on my 32nd birthday, I come in and I rolled with all my students and I submitted everyone on the mat, and it took me 70 minutes roughly. Bro, I was exhausted. 70 minutes of rolling. Basically did a marathon.
Intense rolling too.
Yeah. I mean, these guys are trying to get me, right? So like, I can't do that now. Probably die. You
can probably do it, but the way that you will feel afterwards,
I mean, bro,
it might be a week.
I felt bad then, right? I felt bad then, so let alone now. So I don't have the depth of the gas tank, but I can go, and I can go for as long as I need to go. But I don't have that level of like conditioning that I used to, because it takes so much out of me. But I'm still good. I'm still technical, and I can still win competitions. The thing is you have to adjust, and you have to start to listen to your body. We'll get to that idea in just a second about intuition, but you have to listen to what's going on with your body. And I mean, to me, this is one of the things that jiu-jitsu sort of you're forced to learn, is your body will give you signals. Hey, listen up, right? Like last week, I felt down a little bit on Monday. Tuesday felt off. And so I on those days, I really didn't train hard at all. Did like a little bit of recovery stuff, some stretching. I did one rolling session and didn't really push that hard, because I was like, I don't have it in me. Wednesday, I got sick. Thursday, I was sick, and then I recovered afterwards, but it was a little bug. So I had some little bug was going around or whatever. And I could feel it coming.
Yeah.
Cause I was like, I'm off, you know what I mean? And so I backed off. And so, you can feel when your body starts getting worn down. And so that plays a role into it. So again, going back to what Eugene was saying, in your gym, you probably have some older fellas. Heck, you might even have some guys like me on the internet who are willing to share information. Ask them, hey, what do you do? Ask them, what do you do? And guys in the gym, especially, they'll be happy to like share a couple ideas. Like if you came up to them and said, hey man, like, how do you train? How do you keep doing this at the same age as me? But maybe you're a 40-year-old white belt and they're a 40-year-old brown belt or black belt. What do you do? What do you do? Stay
a lot
active?
more mileage,
Yeah. So it's good to ask them. So the next one is going to be finding moves that match your attributes. So for instance, some jiu-jitsu techniques, all techniques in some way require some level of like attributes, right? Like you have some moves that will require a little bit more explosiveness, strength, mobility, flexibility, things like this. It's just the way it is. For me to pick up a cup, like I'm holding a cup right now, if you guys are watching the video, that takes a prerequisite amount of strength and dexterity. It's if a toddler tries to come up and grab the cup, there's a good chance they're going to drop it, right? Because they don't have the dexterity and the control in their body. So attributes will ultimately play a role in your jiu-jitsu no matter what. And you'll find that you develop sort of jiu-jitsu muscles along the way, but some more than others. So what you got to think about, let's say that you've got really tight hips and you're like, man, I really want to play some rubber guard. Probably not going to be your jam. I mean, because again, it requires a lot of hip mobility, a lot of hip flexibility. And if you're really tight, unless you start stretching regularly and start loosening up those muscles, that's not going to be on the table for you. Likewise, if there's a move that requires a lot of explosive strength, maybe we're talking about a big takedown or something like that, and you are like, don't have that strength in your legs and everything else, that's going to be a tough move for you until you develop that strength or give it some practice. And so when you're looking at techniques, you want to try to find stuff that matches what you have. And again, a good way to kind of do this is when you look at people that are like-bodied, a lot of times you'll find that they have some of the similar attributes that you use. Like you're finding, okay, I'm looking at this super jacked, muscly Owen Livesey guy who's got like, good judo and stuff like that. And he's stocky and he's guard passing. Maybe that's my style. Or maybe you're looking at this really long, lanky 10th planet guy who's inverting for leg locks, and you're looking at your body type. Oh, maybe I can mimic this, And so again, you want to try to find things that match the attributes that you have available to you, because you don't want to go down the rabbit hole of trying to develop a position or a technique that is just ill-suited for what you have.
Yeah, I think we're talking about the attributes, maybe the mobility, your strength.
Yeah.
So those type of things are, if you have a hard time with like getting, rolling onto your neck, or you have some issues with mobility, right? Like maybe you shouldn't invert or use that like as a last resort. Maybe don't create your whole game around inversion, right? Maybe it's just use it when you have to, sparingly. Doesn't mean you can't do leg locks. There's different entries. There's different ways to do it. So that's going to be the thing that I would think of, just like your mobility. And you can develop that. Like you can develop certain things, but don't want to force it. Like a perfect example is Brandon McCatherine, who has like incredible hip mobility.
Yeah, super flexible.
Incredible. And he's been doing that. He's developed that. He can do stuff like moving his legs in certain ways, like just sitting certain ways, and do that lotus position. Like most people's knees are going to feel like they're going to rip apart, and so he's so good at that.
And he developed it.
And he said, we even asked him on the podcast, we were like, hey, working your rubber guard. He's like, dude, I would stretch consistently all the time. So, I mean, that's part of it. I think like some people are more genetically predisposed. Some people have more just laxity in their joints and their tissue. They're just more kind of Gumby like, and they can kind of fold up and roll up into a ball. And some people cannot, and that's okay. So I think that's something, just kind of, like you said, listen to your body and see what feels good. Some positions, some techniques feel good and they feel natural. For me, like one of the things was like we talked about before we got on the podcast, the loop choke. I thought I made that thing up. I was like, dude, I created this choke, and I was hitting it, and I was like, what the heck? And I was kind of like figuring it out and tinkering. And then I was like, oh, dude, that's a loop choke. I was like, what? Nobody ever showed me. It's just naturally I would do the cross collar grip all the time as a control, as a different position, because there's different chokes. And I just started kind of falling into it. So I think you may discover things like use your intuition. And kind of,
you're jumping ahead into the the next one, which is use your intuition.
Oh, did I jump into it?
Yeah, you jumped into it.
All right,
we didn't even announce it. So use your intuition.
There we go.
Damn it, Eugene.
I messed it up. I thought it was, I skipped down the thing.
Yeah. No, so, but that's an important thing, right? So like Eugene was feeling something. Ooh, this feels good. It's working for me. Feels good.
Yeah.
That's something that you need to do, because what you'll find is that no matter what the norm is, you may not fit in the norm. Like I have a guy who, if you look at his body frame, he's not really built for triangles. One of my black belts, Rich. Yeah, let's call him Rich. Don't need to put his last name out there. So Rich has a great triangle, like a fantastic triangle. We would take him to tournaments, and I mean, he was like a Mike Tyson with triangles. He'd go out there and finish guys in like a minute and a half, over and over again, like multiple people. He's not built for a triangle as far as like looking at him, but he played soccer back in the day, he played in college level, and he's got this leg dexterity. And so his legs are so quick, and he developed that finish, and he got so good at it that like now, like, I mean, like he has other things in his game, but his triangle is amazing. And then I've also had students who were tall. One guy in particular he was about, I think 6'4", 6'5" or something like that, Larry.
Yeah,
tall guy.
Larry. Yep.
So Larry was not he's like, I remember him, and he was not like a tall guy, and I expected him to be like a triangle guy. If you actually look at his body, his torso is pretty thick. His legs aren't not thick or whatever, and he could do whatever he needs to do with his legs. But he started liking kimuras. Now, usually tall guys don't like kimuras because there's so much space with the arms. And I never measured him, now, but looking back at it, I would have liked to measure his arm length, because I guarantee his arm lengths are probably a little bit shorter, which is why he could favor the kimura. He was this big torso with shorter arms for the torso, and probably could have locked into it. Because typically with a kimura, you're going to want slightly like a tighter, stronger, shorter arms, thick torso, so that once you get attached to the arms, you have this rotational power from the core to finish, opposed to having really long arms and a really thin core, where then you get attached to it. You've got all this space inside your arms, and you don't have that same tight rotational power from a thick core. And so again, what you have to do along with this is, as you go through and you learn stuff, one of the most important things is that you use your intuition. And if it feels good, don't worry about if it's not supposed to work for you. Don't worry if it's not the best position for your quote body type, whatever. Follow it. See what's there, because again, your game, your style is going to be you. And it'll always be a little bit different than what everybody else does.
No, I agree. Yeah. And some positions just feel natural. Like you fall into them. Just like it just feels good. It feels like it doesn't take a lot of effort, like mental, physical effort to figure it out. Like you may learn a technique and all of a sudden you've got it. And some techniques just like can't, just for some reason your brain's just not wired that way. You can't figure it out. But yeah.
And there's something that kind of goes along with that, is that once you find your intuition finds and brings you into direction, and something feels right, it feels like it's working, something you're probably going to find is that it's going to work it's going to work for you for a while, and then it's going to start to fail. So basically the way that the cycle works with jiu-jitsu, and prepare for this, is that when something's working for you, you go into your gym, you're hitting everybody with these techniques, right? Well, what's going to happen is you don't really have a lot of experience with those techniques and those positions yet. So what'll end up happening is you'll have some immediate success with it, because they're going to be taken off guard. Oh man, like this is new. I didn't expect Bob to like hit me from this position. And then they will quickly adjust, and then that technique or position will fail. And it's at this point that you cannot give up yet, because you're onto something there. You had some initial success. Now you've got to go through the grindy process of developing it past that point. A great example of this was, we talked earlier about the over-under pass. When I started using the over-under pass, I had a lot of success with it. And then at blue and purple belt level, I started getting caught in triangles all the time because I wasn't staying tight on the leg. And so I had to figure that out. But I remember at first I was kind of almost getting discouraged because people catch me in triangles. I was like, man, maybe I should stop using this thing. And I was like, no, I just have to adjust, get better. Same thing happened with my half guard. When I first started playing half guard in any real sense, when I was a purple belt, I remember learning this half guard position. If anybody has my half guard sweeper series, you know the story as I share it. But I learned this position at a seminar, started using it, had a ton of success with it really early on. And I was sweeping everybody, like even some of the higher belts, right? And then they adjusted and they shut it all down. And then I had to get better at the position. Now, half guard's still one of my best positions. Some of those same techniques that I was using back then, I still use to this day, with all kind of little details and adjustments. And so you can't give up on a technique just because it starts to win and then it starts to lose. Stick with it past that point, because if it was working for you for a little bit, there's probably something there worth going. It's almost like maybe you could think of it this way. It's almost like being someone back in the Wild West during the gold mine, right? Maybe you found a little chunk of gold. You're like, sweet, got some gold. And then you start digging a little deeper. You're like, oh, there's nothing left here. There's no more gold. Keep digging a little bit, because it'll be back behind there. It's a little deeper. Just keep going, opposed to stopping and then leaving the rest of that on the table, because there is something behind there. Just an idea.
Yeah, I think the kind of we wrote kind of win, fail, win. So you're getting a lot of wins with this position or this technique, then you start. So you gotta go back, right? You gotta take a step back and look at different entries or different setups. That's usually the case. Is like once you get to where you need to get into, you've got your grips, you've got your kind of where you want to be. Then usually you're gonna get your position. You're gonna get your sweep or your submission. But the entries have to be different. Now you have to be a little more sneaky. You may have to set something else up. So I think that's where that's probably for me, when you're working a technique, it's the entries, the grip fighting. Maybe use a different grip. switch sides, right? You pass on the one side and all of a sudden you can't get there. Now you go to the other side and you work that same passing position and it works.
And I think something else to consider is too, is like, you ever hear someone say like, keep the white belt mindset, something like that. Keep the beginner mindset.
Like being, beginner, like beginner mind, curious mind. Yeah.
Think about what one of the biggest like parts of that is. So keeping a beginner's mindset, keeping a curious mind. Think about one of the most important parts about that is you don't set an expectation. Right. Okay. So like, for instance, if you're a beginner, you know you're not good, right? Like, you're not good. You're not setting some big grand expectation for yourself. One of the problems that happens with us whenever something works is that when it starts to work, we expect it to work. So that we depend upon it to work. Right. And you have to fight against that because there's no guarantee on any given day that any of your techniques are going to work, that any of your jiu-jitsu is going to be effective that day. And one of the things that can really frustrate someone is, let's say they've got a position working for them and they've been working for them and they feel good. They're like, yeah, man, it's working for me. Coach is seeing me hit all the sweeps on everybody or whatever. And then they come in and then Bob stops it. And then you're like, whoa, what happened? Why did it stop? And you get frustrated about it. And then you get like upset with yourself about it. And then you send a message to Jiu-Jitsu on YouTube and say, Chewy, why is this position not working for me? Right. People say that. I'm not messing with anybody. I'm not making fun of anyone. I'm just saying.
You get that? You get messages like that?
Of course. They'll say, man, this thing was working for me. Now it's not working.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's going to happen. And we can troubleshoot the actual mechanisms as to why it doesn't work. But you have to expect that to happen. Like, your gym is going to be this constant thing of that where it works and then it doesn't work. It works and it doesn't work, because once it works, people then they're like, okay, I'm getting hit with a technique. I need to stop that. And whether they know it, they will start to figure out ways to defend it. Even if it's simply by on a subconscious level, they realize every time I stick my hand out, I get armbarred, right? So they learn, don't stick hand out. They learn it in a very primal, playful, subconscious way. They may never have it explained to them. Some of the most important lessons in jiu-jitsu I've ever learned were not explained to me. I learned them because I had feedback that was negative, and so I didn't want to do this, or I had feedback was positive. I was like, let's keep doing this. And so you got to keep that in mind. So if you're going to work on stuff, you have to have that beginner's mindset, which is, again, don't set expectations. And this is going to be really important for one of our last tips, which is you have to experiment and get out of your comfort zone. So a lot of times people will have an area of their game that will become their comfort area, the area that they can go to. If all else fails, I can depend upon this position, this technique to be my go-to, right? Not a bad thing. But it's like Emerson said, if you're not careful, any advantage that you get will become a disadvantage on the other side, right? Because what happens is you become so attached to that advantage, so attached to that gain of skill or whatever it is, that you become lame on the other side, because then you become weak, right? It's like a lot of the old jiu-jitsu guys who were so good at upper body submissions that they were like, I'm not touching these leg locks. This is stupid. That became a huge disadvantage for them really quickly, right? They had to get out of their comfort zone. They didn't want to. And so a lot of them were left behind, or they had to pivot and basically not be focused on competitions anymore, or eventually they had to catch up later on. And so you want to make sure that you're experimenting, because there's something that happens with that. And I experienced this when I remember one of my first coaches, he was trying to show me butterfly guard. And I told him, I was like, man, I'm not going to use this position. It's not going to work for me, whatever. And then I remember I was in a match where I could not take the person down, and I had to rely upon it. And I was actually able to use it pretty effectively, because I was forced to. Now, if I would have been working on it more, I would have been much better. And so it forced me, okay, I need to work on this. And I find out I really love the position. I'm really good at butterfly guard. And so it's one of those things where sometimes you may go into a position or a technique with this mindset of this isn't going to be my thing. I don't think so. But you don't know until you try it. And again, you have to try it out, and then you got to listen to your intuition. What do you think about this? And, how does it work into the rest of my game? Because I've had several techniques that sometimes early on, because they were a little out of my comfort zone, I wasn't too keen on them. And then I started using them. I was like, oh, this is my jam. I'm pretty good at this. Maybe I had to tweak it a little bit to make it right for me. But I explain that, or I share that, because again, that's going to be important. And again, to get out of your comfort zone, you do have to go back into that mindset with let's say that you're one of the better people in your gym, or maybe you've gotten to where you can submit certain people. When you get out of your comfort zone, you're playing with not your A game. Well, you're going to have to lower those expectations, because you're probably not going to be that same person. But in order to give those moves a fair shake, you've got to be okay with failing and getting submitted and, not performing quote well that day, because again, we're in the lab, we're playing around with stuff, and you have to have those days. There's days to where you can come in and like be like, I'm on and I'm going to win today. And then there's days like I'm playing.
I agree. That's hard. It's hard when you're found something that works and you can use it most of the time to quote unquote win the roll or the match or whatever. And yes, use your best stuff in the tournament, or if it's like, a competition type class and you're trying to prep for, something serious. It's hard though. It's hard to kind of go back knowing you've got a tool in the toolbox that works almost every time versus going and using like a dull knife. You got a sharp knife. Now you use a plastic knife. It's not quite as sharp. So it's going to make you, work. And I think you have to be okay with like just knowing. I think sometimes for me, it's giving a shit about what people think. Like, damn, Eugene's not that as good, or what, you know what I mean? It's not really, yourself, like I'm working stuff, but sometimes I think the difficult part is like not feeling like you're holding up your belt rank or whatever. Yeah. Even when you're in the lab kind of working and you're trying to figure stuff out.
Yeah. And again, that's our own egos being worried about that stuff. And again, egos aren't a bad thing. You just have to have it in control.
Yeah.
You guys say, well, this is what I'm, and my thing is the way that I made this a little bit easier on myself. Cause I used to struggle with this big time, is I would go into those sessions when I knew I was going to play with some different stuff, and I would give myself permission to fail. I know it sounds so stupid, but it's like you're making an agreement with yourself. Like I think of myself a lot of times as like two different people. There is the sort of the when I'm relaxed, I'm at home and I'm thinking about what I want to do in life. We all can have these moments where you think about stuff and you can put together this really smart plan. Maybe it's a financial plan, maybe it's a diet plan, maybe it's a training plan, whatever it might be. And there's the person that I am when I'm in the thick of it. Then all of a sudden I'm trying to stick to my diet, but I didn't meal prep, and now I've got to make a food decision. That burger looks pretty good. Or maybe I was like, hey, I wanted to make a financial plan, but now I'm out and man, I want to go splurge on this something that I'm trying to buy. Right. So for me, the way that I think about it is there's the general and then there's the soldier. Right. The general makes the strategy. He's telling what everything needs to move. The soldier follows the strategy. If you guys get into like some esoteric, like I do, archetypes, like things like the king, the warrior, magician. There's a really good book by Douglas Gillette and Robert Moore, The King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, and they talk about these archetypes. And there's the king, and the king is like the centering energy. It directs everything else. And then there's the inner warrior in you that goes out and really asserts itself, right? Well, the warrior needs a king in order to give it direction. And so you have to like think about it that way, where you have to give yourself some direction. And so for me, when I would think about my training sessions, I'm like, okay, on Wednesday, I'm going to go in there and I'm going to try this new position, and I'm going to get submitted. I'm going to get beaten, and that's okay, because that's what I'm there for. And kind of going in there with that like sort of predisposed mindset is better than like going into the session. I want to work on this technique, this position. And then all of a sudden you get beat up, and then you're in the thick of it dealing with your ego and you weren't prepared. Being prepared to like, the ego is going to pop up when it starts getting angry. Remind yourself that it's okay to be submitted today. That's what we're here for, because that's what we have to do. Just like, you're getting ready to eat some food and you're hungry and you told yourself, hey, listen, we're on our diet plan. We're not eating that food. We have to go eat this instead. Making a smart decision. That's something that we all struggle with. And so that's something that's been helpful to me, is basically giving yourself permission ahead of time. And even like you were talking about injuries and stuff like that, I had to do that with that, because I would feel guilty when I didn't train all the time because I was so used to it. And I had to tell myself, hey, on this day, this is going to be a rest day this week. You're not going to train. You're going to feel guilty. It's okay. I'm giving you permission to take a rest day because we need it. And then I would feel guilty, like I always do. I should be training. I should be in the gym. And I don't know if you remember those early days when I would take days off, I would still be lingering around the gym. And sometimes I'd end up on the mat anyway.
Yeah.
It's like, it's okay. Take it off. Just take the day off. Go spend time with your woman. Go do something else.
I had to do that yesterday.
Okay.
I was like,
oh yeah, you were in the gym.
Yeah, but I was getting ready to get on the mats. I was like, oh, well, one of our buddies, Nick, had been out for a while. He just came back.
So your buddy's back.
Like, man, I was like, oh, he's just coming to move around.
Yeah.
I can move around.
Yeah.
I've been dealing, my back been kind of messed up a little bit. And so it's getting better, but like I've already
dealing with a little minor injury. Yeah.
I've done the thing that I preach to people not to do. Don't go back too soon. I went back and pushed a little bit and then paid for it.
Yep.
So, like, it's okay. just fight that urge, I guess, in some ways. You could use that time to study tape or video or instructionals, whatever you want to do there. And then you did talk about injuries, and that was an extra point that I had.
Okay.
If you come in to jiu-jitsu with a pre-existing injury or an injury that maybe you have to work around, like, oh man, I messed up my ACL, had surgery. I don't feel like I want to do a lot of, jamming my knee into the ground with takedowns. I may adjust my takedowns, or may have to adjust the type of guard that I play or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think work around your injuries too, knowing if you're coming into jiu-jitsu and you've got a pre-existing injury, a surgery, or an area of the body that's not as strong or not as developed that you need to kind of protect.
Yeah.
You may work around that. It could be as simple as switching sides. It could be simple as, learn a new technique or something like that. So that's the other thing. And then you had talked about game plan, you kind of mentioned, and I think having a game plan going in when you go into the gym, if you're working on something, have a game plan, think about what you want to work and kind of stick to it, right?
Yeah.
Regardless, all right, I'm getting beat up today. This sucks. Or I've got, I feel like I can get the better of this person, but I'm still going to stick to my game plan. I'm going to try to focus on what I've been focusing on. I think if you want to develop your game plan, it takes months and months and months and reps,
years
and time and drilling. Yeah. Some people don't need to drill as much. If you're good enough, you can do active drilling where you're kind of using the roll as a drilling session for yourself to work on the technique. But you got to drill. You got to spend time drilling. And I'm excited because my wife started training now. So like we're going to drill at home.
Okay.
And I'm very excited about that because I'm going to get some reps in. I think for me, it's going to be helpful developing my game at this point because I'm trying to still add layers to it.
Yeah, of course.
So I think just having somebody you can drill with. So if you have somebody you can drill with at home, I think it's great.
So guys, that's like 7 tips that you could throw into the mix as far as trying to find your game. Again, this is, as I said before, it's not an exhaustive list, but it's some ideas. And those are some good ones. Like, if you really, and again, a lot of times you're factoring in some of these just, without thinking about it. But sometimes it's important to take some of those subconscious things and like really actively sort of keeping them in mind. Like I said, as I got older, I started to realize that subconsciously I was mimicking behavior from more successful people, which had a benefit my life. Because I looked at it, I'm like, well, how did I come from this neighborhood of the city, which is rough, whatever, and then now I'm ending up in this neighborhood, and I've had this trajectory. And I was like, well, I think it's because I mimicked all these behaviors, and I did so just without thinking about it. I think I was just doing it because I was modeling after men that I respected. But then as I got older, I took an active approach to it. And so if I find someone that does something, whether it's their business or their behavior or it's their mindset, if I find something that I like, I'm a martial artist. And I take it for myself. I say, okay, listen, I'm going to learn from you, and I'm going to take that. I'm going to do my own version of it, and this is all you're doing. You're taking stuff from other people, and then you do your own version of it, make it yours. And so those are some tips that you can actively take as an approach to make a style for your game, to make your game different, to have some direction on your game, opposed to just letting it happen. And some of it will happen naturally, but those are some active ways to actively get a hold of it. All right, guys. So hopefully that podcast gave you a couple ideas. If any of those ideas stood out to you, like if something screams, oh, that's a good idea, then my encouragement is forget all the rest and just execute on that one. I'm one of those people where, again, information's great and there's lots of information floating around, but one executed idea, one well executed, like mediocre idea is better than an amazing idea not executed at all, right? Mm-hmm. Because again, there's so many good ideas floating around. The internet is full of them. The information's everywhere. It can be overwhelming. And so again, put yourself on a diet. Okay, you found a good idea. Good. Stop. Go use it. Go do something with it. Go put it into practice now, because that's ultimately what really matters. Imagine like learning the coolest jiu-jitsu technique that would work on everybody, but then you never practice it. Probably not going to work. Mm-hmm. But if you just take an old armbar from guard and you just put your reps in and really play around with it during rolling, it's going to happen. You're probably going to get better with it. It's a simple idea. So anyway, that's the podcast. Hopefully that helps you guys. Again, as always, thanks to our sponsors for helping make this podcast happen. So you guys can join us every week and we can talk about jiu-jitsu and ideas and together that hopefully are useful to you. Again, big thanks to our sponsors for helping make the podcast happen. Ice Barrel. If you guys have heard about ice baths like all of us have, and maybe you've played around with them a little bit and you'd like to set up a home ice bath setup, maybe you've looked up some of the different setups that require electricity, or you've looked up some of the setups and you're not really willing to spend some serious dough on getting an ice setup. Ice Barrel could be a solution for you. They have a very light, it's fairly light. It's a big sturdy plastic barrel made specifically for taking ice baths in. You can get in there and you can kind of stand up so you don't have to put yourself and contort into any weird positions. And because of the fact that it's portable, you can put it wherever you want. You can travel with it. You know, if you have to put it on the back of a truck or something like that, well, you can do whatever you want to with it. And again, if you want to get one, you can check out their website at icebarrel.com and then /Chewjitsu, CHEWJITSU. We have an exclusive discount with Ice Barrel if you want to check one out and get one. But again, check it out. I think ice barrels are great. I think ice baths are really useful as a recovery tool from time to time. And so I'd encourage you to check it out if that's something you're interested in. Charlotte's Web, you can check them out at charlottesweb.com. If you want to save some money on the purchase, use the promo code Jiu-Jitsu20 for 20% off the order. Again, whether you use CBD or not, my encouragement is try the products out for a month, see what you get from it, and see how it affects you. Roll BJJ.com. If you're looking for a new gi, new rash guards, shorts, t-shirts, anything jiu-jitsu related, check it out at epicrollbjj.com. And the promo code is Jiu-Jitsu for 15% off. Also, guys, thanks to Manscaped. If you guys are a man or if you have a man in your life that needs to step up their grooming game, they can do so with the premier products that Manscaped offers. So I've talked about this multiple times. I was so reluctant to bring them on as a sponsor initially. Just because, again, it's like the products were initially focused around trimming up your ball hairs, which it just, I mean, it's like it's something we all do, but it's not something you really want to talk about, you know. Like,
how's your ball hair trimming going?
You know, like okay? me and Eugene don't go up to each other and say, "Hey, man, how's your ball hair trimming been going?"
It's going good. Actually.
Like, I've never gone to Eugene and said, "Hey," like I've never gone to another man and said, "Hey, man, what kind of ball hair trimmer do you use?" You know, like it's like you just don't think about it. But they sent the product. I was like, tried it out. I was like, damn, man, this is actually a pretty good product.
Pretty good.
It's a pretty good product. So I was like, all right, we'll offer it. And a lot of you guys actually have taken advantage of it. And so tons of you guys have sent me receipts. So like, all right, I'm stepping up my game. Here we go.
That's cool.
But that said, too, along with it, they've got a lot of other products now. And so they've got everything from colognes and soaps and beard oils and balms and everything else. And they recently came out with like it's like a whole beard kit, but they also got the trimmer.
Yeah.
And again, the trimmer is super nice. I really like it. Like I had my old like corded trimmer that I used to use for everything. And it's really only purpose at this time was to trim up my beard because it had guards on it.
Yeah.
And then now like I don't need it anymore. So I've got that one. And again, it's nice because technically you could use it, do whatever you want, but it's got this adjustable guard. So as you're going through, instead of having to swap off the guards or anything else, you just flip it has this little dial. You just move the dial up or down, boom, you've got it either longer or shorter, and you can trim your beard up. Again, I typically go shorter on the sides. We go a little bit thicker down here in the bottom, and we just kind of bring it down a little bit to a point. And again, that's I've been shaping my beard up with that sucker. Again, good products. So if you guys want to check out any of their products to scape up your man.
Scape up your man.
There
you go. They're gonna steal it.
That's right.
Trademark that.
You can check them out at manscaped.com. The promo code for the offer is Jiu-Jitsu20. That'll save you 20% off the order. You'll get free shipping and it helps support the podcast. Also, if you want to support the podcast directly, help us keep going and get access to some exclusive content that's getting added to every week, you can go to patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. And upon joining, you will get access to a library of exclusive content with our guests that we've had in the past, as well as some exclusive bonuses. Like I talked about in the beginning of the podcast, one is a seminar where I went into some of my best gi and no-gi techniques. The other one is a seminar, or not a seminar, but a 20-minute roughly routine where Eugene goes into some great mobility and flexibility movements and stretches to help improve those things. Again, if you're someone that has some tightness in your hips and shoulders and stuff like that, it can be incredibly useful to you to add it into the mix as part of your recovery routine. You know, like when you're getting out of the shower in the morning or in the evening and you want something to kind of loosen things up a little bit, or even after a jiu-jitsu class, it would be a fantastic addition to the mix to improve recovery. Because personally, this is my own thought. I notice a massive difference. We were talking about like doing things as you get older. Mm-hmm. One of the things that's helped me as I get older is I like to stretch after I'm done. I might move around a little bit and stretch, but not like hold the stretch, but actually really get a good stretch after training or when I'm done with my showers in the morning or at night, one or the other. And like that really helps me because if I stretch things out, I notice I don't wake up in the morning like super tight after a hard training session. If I have a hard training session, I wake up in the morning and I'm like, oh God, my body just feels tight. Mm-hmm. Whereas if I stretch it out, I wake up and I might be sore, I might be tired and fatigued, but like my body doesn't have that like rigidity where it's like I feel like my muscles are tight and I'm getting out of bed. I'm like, oh God, I can barely move because I'm loosening that stuff up a little bit. Also helps me sleep a little bit better too.
Yeah. I think the the mobility routine's more of a dynamic kind of prep routine for movement, for training, as opposed to like what you're doing is, which some of those routines or those techniques that we do can be held for longer periods of time.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. So I take some of the same stuff that you're doing in that, and I just hold it longer.
Yeah,
because sometimes you'll get into that point where like, oh, I can feel a stretch there, and I'll just sit there for like a minute to 2 minutes.
Like that's perfectly good.
And it's the same movements in some cases, just I add a little stretch to it. I'll just hang out for a little bit. But even like the ones where we're doing the external rotation, right? Like where you're lifting the heel up and stuff, like that one, even if I just do that and I add it into the mix, even though it's a prep thing that I'm activating a muscle, it still helps build alignment with all the other muscles. And I feel like my body feels better because of it.
I think too. So here's the thing. You're doing those longer hold stretches and then you're creating a little more mobility and then you're activating your muscles into those new ranges, which is also helpful. That's how you solidify. Like if you want to get consistent improvement in your mobility, it's good to, stretch or mobilize and then also activate a little bit those end range. That's pretty helpful.
Got it. And so guys, if you want to get that, join the patreon.com/the Jiu-Jitsu podcast. And last but not least, guys, you can get my daily email newsletter, give you an idea to chew on by going to my website at chewjitsu.net/join, JOIN. Upon joining, you'll get access to some free ebooks that I give away, exclusive ebooks that you won't get anywhere else. And you'll also get my daily email, which again, thousands of people enjoy listening to it. They read it because emails don't speak to you, but they enjoy reading it. And again, it's fun. I have fun with it. It's not just like a boring, hey, buy this or here's some random information. I try to make it fun. And so again, you'll get the ebooks and then you can unsubscribe at any time. And that's at jujitsu.net/join. So guys, with that said, thank you so much for being here today and we'll talk to you next week.